Welcome to the special edition of the Chiefs. With us right now are Ana Marie Pamintuan of the Philippine Star, Lucy Cruz Valdez, the head of News 5, and joining us in a while will be Robbie Alampay of One News, reporting from the Channel 5 newsroom in Mandaluyong City. Ladies, happy
Good
weekend,
evening.
almost.
Happy
Hi,
almost
good evening.
weekend. Oh.
Pwede na
What's the big
mag-backride.
story today? Backride.
Bawal.
para naman nagmumotor
It,
ka.
it's so funny how even these little things now mean a lot, no? Na
Yeah,
parang,
to a lot
wow,
of
pwede
people.
na mag-backride.
Pero if I remember correctly, dapat you have to bring with you proof na mag-asawa kayo or mag-live-in kayo.
Mag-live-in,
Partner.
Oh, hindi ko lang alam
Paano mo
kung
gagawin yun,
mag-live-in.
no?
Hindi ko lang alam kung mag-live-in how you prove it eh. Baka may barangay
Ano
certificate.
ka? Pati nga raw girlfriend, boyfriend eh. So sabi ko, paano mo naman papatunayan yun, di ba?
Ayun ang mahirap-hirap doon.
Ano validation nun?
Oo.
O paano yung mga pabling, di ba?
Oo, lalo kung babaero, di ba? I mean, ang daming girlfriend.
Hindi mo
pero-
naiisip talaga.
Diba? Hindi, pero ano di ba? Kailangan mag-install ka ng divider, tapos yung
Oh, yeah.
hawakan sa likod, di ba? So, hindi ka pwedeng naka-hug dun sa sa taong nagda-drive, sa biker.
Kung mag-asawa pa naman kayo, di ba?
Ganun,
Parang may LQ kayo.
O, di convenient, nakahawak ka lang pag may
And
LQ.
I was talking to some riders, and they were complaining na the divider is a bit more dangerous than a lot of people think. Kasi first of all, it's drag eh. I mean, if you're going
yes,
down the
air
highway,
drag,
it's
no? Yes.
that may bend and even snap off pag medyo may speed ka ng konti kasi siyempre it's drag on the air. It's not
Right.
aerodynamic. So baka mamaya lumipad at tumama sa ibang tao.
Hindi pa masapat yung
May pinakitang design si Governor Yap ng Bohol.
Yes.
Diba? Yun.
Right.
Baka pwede yun. O kaya, ewan ko kung anong gagawin doon. Dapat may lalabas na, may daanan nga ng hangin. Delikado.
Joining us now is Robbie Alampay.
Yung helmet. Hi, Rob.
Sino ba rider?
Nakikinig lang ako dahil si Ed ang expert sa
Hindi, si Robby
naman ako.
nagbabike yata Yung aerodynamic.
Pinag-usapan namin kasi yung mga nakikiantas na chicks eh. Kaya ikaw ang kailangang magsalita doon.
Bakit may chicks ka?
Akala mo
Ano ka?
Pogi ako pagka nakamotorsiklo ako pero hindi umaandar yung motorsiklo. Hindi ko kaya. Hindi ko kaya paandarin.
Photo op lang.
Photo op lang.
Yung isa pang interesting, mag-hoarding siguro bukas mga tao ng Lysol, Lysol.
Bakit?
Ano meron? Yung dahil sa airborne na.
Spray, oo. Lab test.
Sorry, yung
Lab test
Lysol.
ng US Environmental Protection Agency. Na-test nila na it can kill the COVID virus. Sabi ko, bukas out of stock lahat siya.
Actually, ngayon pala nagkakaubusan na eh. I mean, dati pa nahihirapan na eh. I mean, it was a go-to for a lot of people. People assumed from the start.
Yung
Hindi
Max,
na toxic yun.
wala na sa mga e-commerce sites. Out of stock. Yung Max Mist.
Safe ba yun? Safe?
Nasisiyan tayo sa chismisan eh. Let's introduce some of our, at least let's introduce the line of our guests tonight. A little bit later on, we'll talk about ABS-CBN. So we have a guest to talk about that because of course the vote that was expected today will be probably cast tomorrow. So we will talk about that in the second half of our show. The first half of our show, we have with us, of course, Finance Undersecretary Tony Lambino, one of our favorite resource persons, to talk about siyempre, one of the more important and familiar things in Filipino life, utang.
Okay.
Hi, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Robbie. Hi, pautang please.
Dami ko na utang, no?
Sir, let me ask you a question that I think is on the minds of a lot of Filipinos. After yesterday's press-on briefing ni Finansec Dominguez. Siyempre nabanggit niya, we've spent so far mga 375 billion for the COVID-19 response, but we have also contracted mga 1.22 trillion pesos in loans from January to around April this year. Of course, the money is not not here yet. I suppose that's safe to assume. But how much of the money is already here, and how much have we? How much of the money is already available, and how much can we spend in the next few weeks? Kasi whenever we listen to government, parang nangangapos tayo parati sa pera.
Well, Ed, alam mo naman na this COVID situation is putting a lot of countries, no, in a situation where they're spending more than they usually do. In many cases, spending beyond their means. No? Ganyan talaga pag may crisis, kailangan mag-respond. However, I guess a good way to understand that is not just to look at the nominal debt number. It's really the debt relative to the size of the economy. Just like in any family, the ability to borrow should be weighed against the earning capacity of the family members, because that says how much you will be able to pay back over time. And so, what we are tracking very closely is, of course, our debt versus our GDP, or what they call the debt to GDP ratio. Our debt to GDP at the end of 2019 was 39.6%. That is very respectable. It is at an all-time low, actually, compared to when we were tracking this starting in the 80s. In fact, in 2004, our debt was at around 74.4% of GDP. So now we were able to bring that down to 39.6%, also because of our growing economy, and that's due to decades of solid fiscal management and economic management. But that being said, what we really need to see is our debt to GDP not going above around 50%, which would keep us within the median of the region, as well as our credit rating peers. And one thing that says that we are able to pay back in a responsible and prudent way is that even the Japan Credit Rating Agency, even in the midst of the crisis, upgraded our credit rating from BBB plus to A minus. Now, that's the highest credit rating we have ever received from the Japan Credit Rating Agency. And even Standard & Poor's, that increased our credit rating last year to BBB plus, affirmed that we are still BBB plus with a stable outlook. So if you look, it's not just us saying it, no, it's also the experts globally that are watching whether the debt that countries are taking on are at levels that they can comfortably
are manageable.
Yes, exactly.
As like just a basic point, I really appreciate how you explained the debt to GDP ratio. But is there any danger of us getting close to the 50% ceiling that we're going to hit?
No, the economic managers have said that as a matter of policy, what we want to do is stay within the median of the region. So that would be at around 50%, because in another way of looking at it is our deficit, no? Because the deficit is covered by borrowings. So ang budget deficit natin ngayon, the estimate of the DBCC, the economic team, is we will be at around 8.4% for this year. And we can go up to maybe 9%, no? Which would be equivalent to around 50% debt to GDP. So those are two ways of looking at it. No? Our deficit, which should not go above 9% if we are to stay within the median of the region, or the debt to GDP, which should not go beyond 50%.
Secretary Dominguez said that the debt will be paid by tax payments in the future, because he's expecting healthier Filipinos by then, no? What time period are we talking about when we think about the repayment? Are the payment terms for this debt so far into the future that we can actually see beyond this uncertain time into the new normal, as we call it?
Yes, the repayment terms for official development assistance, these are the larger loans, no, from the World Bank, Asian Development Bank, AIIB, even Japan, no, through JICA. I think the longest repayment term is around is around 40 years, Luchi. So we're really looking at long repayment terms and low interest rates because our credit rating is good. Ganun din tayo, di ba, sa ating mga kaibigan or sa mga umutang sa atin. Pag sa tingin natin, kaya talaga nilang bayaran yung inuutang nila, mas maluwag tayo sa terms.
Yes.
Which is what our development partners are offering us, no? Whether it's Japan, whether it's an international financial institution. So we're
when
really reaping. Yes, go ahead. Sorry.
When Secretary Dominguez talks about historic lows in terms of repayment terms, what are those? What are those historic lows?
Well, it really varies per agreement. No? Those are negotiated on a per agreement basis. They have different tenors. They have different interest rates, and it's important to note they also come in different currencies. So each loan is negotiated on its own terms. But what we have to make sure of is that the terms that we negotiate for any of these official development assistance agreements is better than what we would have gotten from the private capital markets. And the record is clear. If you compare any of the agreements, and they're all posted on the Department of Finance website, if anyone would care to read through them. They're not easy reading, advanced warning. But if you want to read them, they're posted there. There are explanations as well, some PowerPoint presentations that give context and background. But what we are sure of is that we are getting better terms than we would have in the past, and than accessing credit from the private markets.
Okay, Asek, I mean, going to the other side lang of that, going to the other side lang of the debt. We've talked about the terms, we've talked about our access to that debt. On the other side, saan ba gagastusin yan? And how can people track how that money that we're going to borrow is going to be spent?
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. These loan agreements are used for different purposes. Now, for instance, some of them are for health investment. Some of them are for enhancement of, for instance, the 4Ps program. Others are for infrastructure. We have quite a number in our infrastructure program, and infrastructure is such an important area of investment because it has the highest multiplier effects, no, in an economy. It creates jobs because of the construction, but it also improves a lot of productivity in different areas of the country. And our Build program, Secretary Mark Villar also gave an update yesterday, during the pre-SONA of the Economic Development Cluster and the Infrastructure Cluster. The Build program is gaining steam again, subject to minimum health standards. So, and it's not just about the flagship projects, the big ones like ports and terminals and the like, and railways. The Build program is made up of thousands of projects all over the country, many of them provincial roads, school facilities, health facilities, barangay hall improvements, etc. But these things really improve economies all over the country. So we have to keep investing in the infrastructure program. And as I mentioned, it's beginning to pick up again.
So the projects are sector and project specific, no? Most ODAs naman are like that. Ngayon, pinag-uusapan, USEC, yung stimulus package. Can you borrow to finance the stimulus package? Kasi sinasabi yata ni Secretary Dominguez, baka hindi pwede.
Ami, thank you for that question, and thank you for calling me Yusek, although I'm very much still an ASEC. Oh, okay lang po.
Sabi ko dapat na-promote na eh.
Thank you, Luchi. But I'm very happy where I am and with what the opportunities that are being given to do what we do. But Ami, no, actually, borrowings are not considered additional revenues. No? Borrowings should only be used to pay for your deficit. So kung nag-fall short ng konti ang revenues relative to the authorized spending that Congress provides through the budget, then you can borrow to cover the shortfall. But also the law is very clear, and this is constitutionally mandated, that you cannot just start expanding your budget by borrowing. That is sort of a safeguard that the constitutionalists put into our law.
So anong magiging revenue source for the stimulus package? Napakalaki yata nun, ha? And there are several proposals in both chambers.
Yes, I mean, we are currently working very closely with leaders of Congress to figure out what the right level of stimulus will be. We're also, of course, as Secretary Dominguez has said previously, open to increasing our level of borrowing as authorized by Congress, if ever, no. Only if the regional average also increases. We're also watching our peers to make sure that we are still a credit-worthy country, because the people really do benefit from us having a good reputation as a development partner. So we're thinking, no, for the Bayanihan 2, that this is really a stimulus one. It's a stimulus one package that can be appended to, that can be followed up with additional types of stimulus if the conditions allow it. But we still have to maintain a very responsible fiscal and economic management stance, or else, if we're not seen as a responsible development partner, the costs will outweigh the benefits.
Sir,
Sec, we're hearing
the
news.
secretary, when the secretary was speaking about repayment using taxes in the future, was he speaking about new taxes or more vigorous collection of existing taxes?
Well, as we know, no, our revenues were affected by this pandemic. It's, I think, pretty intuitive na nangyari po ito. Bumaba po ang collections compared to last year, although the BOC, by the way, and this was reported yesterday during the pre-SONA, the Bureau of Customs, was able to collect 4% higher than their target. So we're seeing a little bit of a pickup, the target for June. So we're seeing a little bit of a pickup in economic activity. That's one sign that we're watching very closely. The collections have been delayed because there were a number of extensions that were given. And so our revenue collection really did suffer because of this pandemic. However, we are seeing a very strong rebound next year. This year, we already know that the estimates are that we will have a shrinking economy. There will be a contraction for the whole year. However, even international watchers are predicting a strong rebound in 2021. So the taxes will, of course, be collected from the most usual sources. However, there are a few proposals that are making their way through Congress, and we're studying these proposals very carefully. There are some on digital taxation. There are some on the POGO sector. There are a number of bills that have been filed.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm glad you mentioned that, Asik, because precisely speaking of collections, the last time you were here, we were talking about POGOs. We were talking about having to collect. I mean, not just taxes, but also registration fees and so on. In recent weeks, we've been monitoring news of some POGOs already packing up and upping and going. Supposedly, where are we with the POGOs?
Yeah, the BIR task force is watching this space very, very carefully. The position is very clear because the country should benefit from whether the presence is here, no, or even if they have offshore offices. That is the position of the task force that Secretary Dominguez put together. So if they want to operate here, then society should benefit. No? Philippine society should benefit from that, which is why a requirement for reopening of these POGOs was stipulated, no? That they have to pay whatever taxes that are due from them. There is no official update yet, but as soon as the numbers are available, we'll be sure to report those.
And there will be updates to the numbers. I mean, that's
Yes,
the question.
definitely.
Because your position is not a problem. It's all, the position has always been clear. The question of people is, are we actually following through, and do we actually have both the carrot and the stick to actually collect?
Yeah. Well, we certainly have the carrot. I'm sorry, we certainly have the stick. No? The carrot, I think, is whether they'll be profitable for them. No, that's really the estimate that any smart business person will be making. So I'm not sure what's happening in the POCO sector these days during this pandemic. I'm also not sure what's happening in other countries where most of the gamblers are located. So we have to watch this space carefully and look at a lot of interrelated factors.
What about what's happening in the PEZA? Because we're reading reports that there are several companies that are closing shop. And many of them are transferring to Indonesia and other places. And Charito Plaza has said that they're alarmed that, or rather, they're afraid that many export companies will actually consolidate and maybe even close shop in several countries, including the Philippines.
Yes, we are seeing a lot of movement in this space, no, in the BPO sector and other export-oriented industries. Luchi, the Create Bill is really something that we need to pass in
Yes.
order to attract more investors. What we are proposing in the Create Bill, now that it's also a COVID response bill, no? Once the pandemic hit us, kasi we started reviewing the bill, and we put in a few additional, features, no, that are COVID-19 responsive. First is to lower the corporate income tax rate faster by 5 percentage points right away for the vast majority of businesses in the country. So that's the first feature. The second one is to enhance our incentives. And the most important feature that we put there that wasn't there before, but other countries are doing, is the ability for the president, with a recommendation from the board, no, the Fiscal Incentives Review Board, to offer not only fiscal incentives but non-fiscal incentives. Other countries do that. No, we don't have it yet in our incentive regime. So non-fiscal incentives would include
Yes,
things
what are
like
those?
warehousing, for instance. Baka they need help in setting up the infrastructure for their supply chain. It could mean facilitation of permits and licenses. It could mean help with finding the right land on which they can build their facilities. So other countries already do this, and we don't yet. And in the Create Bill, we've included that as a feature. That is only for the most desirable investments that will provide the largest benefit for the people. No? Maraming trabaho dapat ang ma-create, or maganda yung mga trabaho, no? High value jobs, or the investment will bring a lot of research and technology to the country. So that's another feature that we'd like to put in. Oh, by the way, in the Create Bill, we've also extended the net operating loss carryover, which is essentially that a company that loses money in 2020 can claim it as a deduction. Right now in our law, they can only do that for 3 years.
Yeah.
In the Create Bill, we want it to be extended to 5 years, so that companies that were hit hard can actually claim those as deductions for 5 years, till 2025.
Sec, kumusta yung effort niyo to regulate the online sale of SIN products? Meron na bang resulta?
I think si Secretary Mon Lopez clarified, no, what the efforts are pointing toward. No? It's really making sure that if there is no way to verify the age of the buyer, they should not be able to purchase SIN products, no? Tobacco products or vape products or alcohol products through online commerce. So it depends. Is there a way to verify the age, no, at least of the buyer? And if there's none, then the sale should not be allowed.
So it's only a condition, sir. It's not an absolute ban on online sales of SIN products.
Well, the position is being operationalized. No? So how do we actually implement this? And that is one idea that Sec Mon Lopez has already shared, no, on how to operationalize. It's also very troubling, no, that young people can access these kinds of products that they cannot buy from brick and mortar stores. So we really need to figure out how to do this well. and correct.
Yes, sir. I asked that kasi the sin products, of course, the tax of the sin products are used to fund yung healthcare system.
Yeah.
And given the fact that you have a pandemic ongoing, most of the sales probably are going online. And if you cut back on that, then you may feel the impact on maybe in the long run the healthcare system.
Yes, well, two things. No, if you look at the inflation numbers, no, sin
Yes.
products, there's a bit of an uptick there. So you really see how inelastic the demand for these products is. No, in addition, the BIR issued a reminder to all online sellers that they have to register. So they have to register with the BIR, and DTI also sent out a reminder that they also should register with DTI. This is not a new set of rules. Now, these rules pre-existed COVID and pre-existed this upsurge in online commerce and economic activity. What we are also emphasizing is that the exemptions that exist for brick and mortar stores or physical stores are also applicable online. No? So if a small seller earns 250,000 or less, then they're exempt from corporate income tax. If the seller has revenues of 3 million or below, then they are exempt from paying VAT. No, so those are two things, no, that we'd like to remind everyone about. First, it's not a new rule. It was a reminder that this is required. And second, that the exemptions for small businesses are maintained even in the online space.
Asek, this was in the news today. Speaking of the investment climate, this was in the news today. Fitch Solutions says they're closely monitoring the ABS-CBN franchise saga at the House of Representatives. And specifically, Fitch says what it calls a highly politicized outcome, if ever, of ABS-CBN will have a negative effect on investor sentiment in the Philippines. Do you share that sentiment?
Well, I think Secretary Dominguez was asked that yesterday, no, during the pre-SONA, and he did share that whatever is happening in all of these spaces, you are still seeing a very good performance of our bonds. You are still seeing a very good performance of different kinds of investment vehicles. No? So the Philippines is seen as a very reliable issuer, no, of these securities. And that is one thing that he mentioned, no, that we did not see a dip in investor confidence in securities that the government guarantees.
Yes, but that's still without an actual resolution to the ABS-CBN situation. And there's a lot of things that are tied to that. One is there is a wide perception that this is politicized. Objectively speaking, given that all regulators were brought there, all regulators said there's no problem with ABS-CBN, it just leaves a political question. Another thing is that the whole concept of PDRs was brought into the discussions there. All of these discussions, do you think will be something that investors will look at specifically once there is, if there is a negative resolution to ABS-CBN transaction?
Well, again, as Secretary Dominguez said yesterday, despite the controversies, we haven't seen a dip in investor confidence. No? So I think, I guess the hope is that this situation gets resolved as quickly as possible.
Okay. One last question on the you spoke about the trade bill. I wanted to ask about the Arise bill. Does the Department of Finance and does the Secretary of Finance have any position on the controversial proposal within the Arise bill, effectively suspend the powers of the Philippine Competition Commission for 6 months, extendable to 1 year?
Yeah, we have to look at that provision very closely. No, I think there was a view that there are some very specific areas that could be subject to that provision. However, it was not a proposal for any sort of carte blanche exemption from PCC scrutiny. So we look at it again very carefully. I don't think it was in the version that the executive submitted. No? As again, Secretary Dominguez mentioned yesterday, he was asked the same question. Also, may I also, since you mentioned Arise, mention that there is another Arise, which is in a bill called Guide. And that arise is very important. No, it's a joint venture company that will be enabled through the guide legislation. But it's also called Arise, so that's why it's a little bit confusing. And this Arise Inc. will be able to make equity investments in strategically important companies that are experiencing solvency issues. So that's another feature of the economic recovery that we are advocating. The other bill, the counterpart of Arise, this time for liquidity problems, is a bill that will allow for the creation of a special purpose vehicle that can buy from banks, no? Non-performing assets and non-performing loans, so that they can clean up their balance sheets as we go through this pandemic and this crisis. So the idea is really to have a multifaceted approach to supporting various businesses, whether micro, small, medium, or even the large companies that are suffering from the pandemic.
Okay, to lessen the dependence on mergers and acquisitions, being facilitated and taken advantage of with this Arise. Yeah. Okay.
Sir, tawagan na natin extra rice.
Nagagutom ka, no?
Maraming salamat, Assistant Secretary Tony Lambino. Thank you again for joining us tonight.
Oh, by the way, sorry, Lucci, please thank Mr. Robert Galang. No, TV5 was the first network that agreed to carry the pre-SONA of the economic development and the infrastructure clusters. We have been tracking the numbers, and we are so happy to report that, well, compared to previous pre-SONAs, it's been the most viewed pre-SONA already, at close to 900,000 views. So thank you so much to TV5 for being the first to support.
We will tell our president.
Yes, please tell Mr. Galang. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Magiging
Thank you. Bye, future USEC. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Okay, bye.
Okay, we will just go into a gap, but stay with us, because after this gap, we will be talking about ABS-CBN, and we are fortunate to have with us, when we come back, Congressman Lito Atienza to talk about the ABS-CBN franchise bill in Congress. So stay with us, please. Bagal lang.
Welcome back to this special edition of the Chiefs. We are now in the final stage of our conversation And now joining us is Buhay Party List Congressman Lito Atienza. Welcome to the Chiefs, Congressman. Good evening po.
Thank you. Ami, thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, well, sa House kanina, of course, everyone was watching the deliberations on the franchise of ABS-CBN. Akala namin magbobotohan na, yung pala, mukhang magkakatagalan. They're going to form a technical working group. Bukas kaya makakaasa kami na meron na finally na vote.
Botohan, palagay ko hindi pa dahil nga merong technical working group. Hindi
Yes.
hihintay pa yung trabaho nun. Hindi ko maintindihan ang mga ginawa nila rito sa issue nito. Ang haba-haba ng
Oo nga.
procedures, almost 12 sessions.
Yeah.
This is the longest hearing on a franchise application done by any Congress that I have attended. Kasama ko sa regular batasan pambansa, hindi ganyan.
Actually, sir, bakit may TWG pa?
Hindi ko maintindihan.
Actually, kasi
Palagay ko kasama sa drama, Robbie.
Ano ang drama, sir? Ano ang drama?
Hindi nyo, sa
Ako'y
pagkakatindi
napupuna
ko,
ko.
sir, ano po,
I'll share with you.
Yeah.
I'll share with you that from the beginning, alam nila kung ano ang gusto nila. Yung I'm talking about the leadership, ha? Ako naman talaga nagsabi from the beginning, pag ginusto, may paraan. Pag ayaw, maraming kadahilanan. Pero dumaan pa tayo sa maraming mga pasikot-sikot, supposed hearing, you saw all of them. Hindi naman hearing eh. Were they listening? No, they were not listening. They were prosecuting, investigating. It was an inquisition more than anything else. Congressman Marcoleta aired charges, and then he prosecuted the charges that he aired. So hindi hearing. Hindi naman ganun ang proseso ng hearing for a franchise application. And what is even bothersome, they monopolized the whole procedure because they said, patas kami, pantay-pantay ito. Kayo na humusga. Pantay-pantay ba yung nakita nyo? Pag si Congressman Marcoleta nagtatanong, sina 2 oras bibigay nila. Eh, pumasok lamang si Congresswoman Karin, binigyan ng 1 oras at 15 minutos. 2 slide presentation ang kanyang pinalabas pa. What is this all about? Ako naman, nakikita ko, hindi naman sila interesado sa kanilang mga iniimbitang mga authorities, regulators at that. Expert opinion ng mga inimbita nila. On the issue of constitutionality, walang sumang-ayon sa kanila. Lahat, nagsabi, constitutional, lahat yung mga nangyari sa ABS. Pati na yung takeover ng mga Lopez from the government, sabi nga ni dating Secretary or Senate President Enrile, hindi naman talaga nawala sa kanila yung property yan eh. Kinuha lang yan ng martial law. After liberation, after people power, binalik sa kanila. Anyway, lahat yung kanila accusation on the citizenship, hindi sila nakakuha ng any positive reaction from the authorities that they invited. Supreme Court decisions were cited by the lawyers and they proved that a Filipino, natural-born Filipino, si Gabi Lopez, an American citizen then because he was born in Boston, America. Under American laws, that makes him automatically an American citizen. Now, is there a law in the Philippines that says dual citizens cannot run a media outfit? Wala po. Is there a constitutional ban on this? There are provisions of the Constitution. The Constitution said only natural-born Filipino. So Gabi Lopez, was he natural-born? Yes. So therefore, qualified. Wala naman yung argument na yun. Yung sabi ni Congressman Marcoleta, sobra-sobra na ang haba ng prangkisa. The Constitution limits up to 50 years only the existence of any franchise. Nung sinabi ng mga abogado, bakit po PLDT? Bakit po Meralco? Bakit po yung mga ibang franchise holder na more than 100 years na po sila? Kasi wala naman talagang prohibition ng Constitution on the length of time that the corporation can exist, exercising the privilege of franchise. May sinabi si Congressman Marcoleta, hindi, binigyan kayo ng 150-year franchise. June 19, 1969 ba? Bagay, hindi pa tayo pinanganak ng
Congressman, mukhang, I mean, the legal arguments, the constitutional arguments have been heard, been aired, and every time it's aired and every time it's ignored, it just keeps going back to what a lot of people perceive, that this is ultimately really just a political exercise. So doon po gustong puntahin, let's talk politics. Ito naman po kayo, how are the discussions going on among your colleagues? I mean, behind the hearings, ano po ba yung sentiment na nakukuha niyo sa mga kasama niyo sa
Ang paningin ko, if Speaker Cayetano does not meddle, does not direct, does not get the majority to vote in favor of the rejection, mananalo yung ABS franchise. It is the general sentiments of a typical congressman.
Are you saying that the speaker seems to be putting pressure on congressmen to vote against the franchise?
I'll give you an example, Lucy. Kanina, nagsalita bigla ang speaker. Siyempre, wala makakapigil doon. He gave his own valedictory and summary of what the issues are all about. All of a sudden, meron siyang sinabi, which to me is bothersome. Hindi naman napag-usapan, pero sinabi mo, that may be an indirect pressure because you change the nature of the discussion. Sabi niya, kung gusto ninyo ng mga oligarchs magkaroon ng mga ganitong super media network to control the businesses that they are in, you vote for it. Bakit ganun ang presentation? Parang, kung ganun ang presentation, sino ba naman ang who will disagree with him? Ako, I believe that corporations should be controlled. Hindi pwedeng isang tao lang mayari ng lahat. Marami na rito ngayon sa atin na kailangan ng batas na to put a limit to what you can buy and own in the Philippines in whatever field, not only in media.
Well, what do you think is the sentiment of the silent majority, as they call it?
They listen through the hearings, so-called hearing. They listen to the Inquisition. They heard the truth. Kaya pag-uusap-usap, dapat bigyan. Pero sabi ko nga sa inyo, the reality in Congress is that what is said may not be what is true. Sabi ni Speaker Cayetano is giving everybody a free hand. Use your conscience. But let me talk to you first.
Congressman.
I have no proof whatsoever. I don't know what they talk about, but they are talking.
Congressman, we're still speculating on the political interests here of different people, different individuals. But ano po ba nanginging ibabaw dito? Is this, we all know where President Duterte's sentiments were, especially months ago. He does not hide that. But given the political considerations and the fact that it does come down to the voting of congressmen, a lot of incumbents who will be up for re-election in 2022, kanina po bang political interest na nangingibabaw kay sa Kongreso? Is this still ultimately about President, or is this really more about now the political interest and state of congressmen?
Probably that may be motivating some of the prosecutors. I'd identify them properly. They were prosecutors. They were not members of Congress listening to a hearing. They were prosecuting. Apat sila. Barsaga, Defensor, Marcoleta, and Remulla. Sumama pa ng bandang huli, Congresswoman Garin. Bakit daw siya inapi? So she was very, very adamant in punishing ABS-CBN for her Dingbaksya mess.
Coverage.
No, Meron ng desisyon ng DOJ. Sabi ko nga, huwag na natin pag-usapan yan ng baksa. The DOJ already decided you will be indicted. As you are now indicted, you will be charged in court with reckless imprudence resulting in the deaths of many children. Kaya hindi ito ang forum to discuss the Dengbaksya issue. Nagalit, ako nawawala. Yun na. Bakit nila pinabayaan yun? Parang naging major, one of the mortal sins of ABS was to expose the suspected wrongdoing in the Dengbaksya vaccine scandal. And lahat yung mga issue na kanilang ginamit, sinagot ng mga regulators of government, yung PDR. Sinabi ng SEC that's perfectly legal. Yung, sabi ko sa inyo, sabi ni Marcoleta, sobra-sobra na ang haba ng prangkisa ng ABS. Kailangan putulin na yan according to the Constitution. Walang ganun sa Constitution. Yung pinaliwanag sa kanya, nagbago siya ng tono. Hindi na niya inulit yung sobra-sobra. Doon sinabing PLDT, Meralco, puro lagpas na ng 100 years ng mga franchise na yan. At wala po naman talaga provision ng Constitution to disallow the continuation of a corporation who enjoys the benefits of a franchise. Basta ang importante, sinabi ng Constitution, any franchise cannot be more than 50 years. Any single franchise. So if you keep on getting 25, walang masama ron. Umabot ka ng 200 years, good. The longer the corporation, especially on media, exists, it becomes even a more effective institution protecting strengthening democracy in the land. So, nung medyo nasagot na, inibanan naman ang topic. Kaya, umikot kami ng umikot. 12 hearings. Maniwala kayo. It took me a lot of patience to wait for my turn dahil palagi akong huli.
Yes, sir. Sir, si Congressman P.D. Barzaga, who grilled the BIR, PEZA, and ABS-CBN over the PDR and tax payments, kanina he appeared to concede that regulators may not really have an issue with ABS-CBN. However, ang sabi niya kanina, not everything licit is honorable. Sabi niya, there are social and moral considerations at stake here. More than the legal consideration. So at least on the surface, it appears that he's conceding na walang legal na sabit. Pero meron daw ganung moral na sabit.
Ed, ang umpisa ng ito, supposedly charges of the illegalities committed by ABS. Hindi naman sinabing moral eh. Kaya yung issue ni Congressman Abante, malaswa ang mga palabas. Hindi yun ang kanilang sinabi. Sabi nila, merong mga ginagawang illegal ang ABS. Yun ang aming premise. Kaya nagkaroon ng ganitong uring aksyon, although belated. Ang application nung pang isang taon, dapat tinake up na ito before the pandemic. And tagal-tagal natulog ito sa Kongreso, inabot ng deadline. Nagkaroon ng issue with NTC. Kaya ang feeling ko, I don't know what I can do at this point in time. Hearing Speaker Cayetano say, are you in favor of allowing oligarchs? Teka muna, ang feeling ko rin, sensitive ako dyan. Dapat magkaroon talaga ng control para hindi naman masyadong lahat ng corporation dito nagpag-aari na lang ng ilang tao, especially media. So, bakit bigla pumasok yung argument na yan? Hindi nang pinag-usapan, hindi nang pinagdebatihan, hindi yun ang subject of the
franchise
charges earlier that caused all of this lengthy discussion of the franchise application.
Yes, sir. Actually, sir, si Speaker... Yes, sir. Actually, si Speaker po pushed it further pa nga eh. Sabi niya kanina, parang we should not allow big businesses to meddle in both media and politics. Meron siyang ganung bitaw kanina eh. Sabi it's a dangerous combination. Yeah, well, yeah. But at the same time, yes sir. Pero sir, at the same time, di ba?
Ito ba ang illegality sinasabi nyo? Hindi yun ang umpisa eh. Bakit ang patapos iba na? Yan sinasabi ko. From the very start, I suspected that they will have a script to follow, and at the end, they will reject. But you spend people's money, Ed. 12 hearings of Congress, you compute how much we spent in the process. You extended and stressed the patience of people who are affected. We are not affected. We are not employed by ABS. Pero kawawa naman yung mga taong mga empleyadong mga maliliit. Yung mga tagasunod ng ABS, news, entertainment, umaasa yan na magkakaroon ng patas na paglilitis dahil hindi naman talaga hearing. Ang bandang huling lalabas, ipapayagan. Sabagay, di pa naman nagbobotohan. No? Pero itong ating pag-uusap, I'm sure nakikinig naman yung mga ibang congressmen, ang aking pakiusap talaga, isipin natin yung the bigger issue. Is this the best time to get people jobless when many are already jobless because of the pandemic? Do you want more people to go hungry when a lot of people are already hungry because of the pandemic? Even the timing is very bad, and believe me, people are getting frustrated to the point of getting angry.
Okay.
Remember
But sir,
that? A hungry man is basically an angry man.
okay. But sir, despite all of that, the process being what it is, can you give us an idea what this task, this technical working group is all about? How is it supposed to work? Has there
Ano
has
yun?
there been an implementation of that?
Mapag-aaralan nila.
Does that give us an idea of ano is?
You're correct. Yun din ang tanong ko. Ano ba pag-aaralan? Charges were aired, investigated, scrutinized, binulat-lat nyo, pati underwear yata ni Gabi Lopez gusto nyo makita. Wala kayong makita. Ngayon, iba naman ang usapan ngayon. Are you in favor of the oligarchy controlling our country? No, I'm not. Let's talk about that in another piece of legislation. Not in this one. But anyway, ako give up na ako. I feel they will have their way because that's the reality in Congress. When the baton of the orchestrator points to you, you are supposed to react.
Yun na nga sinasabi ko, Congressman, na it's a political process daw eh. Kaya seeing what's happening now in Congress, there are some suggestions na tanggalin yung power to grant franchise or to delegate the power to grant franchise to a non-political body. Kasi pwede naman daw yun. Are you in favor of that? Natanggalin sa
Religious pwede, Ami?
Oh, sige.
Something like the FCC. Something like the Federal
in the US,
Communications Commission.
Pwede nyo naman
An independent body.
Alam mo, ang concern ko, not so much about ABS. I'm concerned about the country. Ito, hindi naman to issue that will pass just because wala na ABS. Ayoko ang media pinakikialaman ng politiko. I don't want your editorial decision
Ayaw rin namin yun, sir.
be
On
intruded
the record.
by politicians like me. Iba ang aming pananaw sa inyo. I want a media that is strong, stable, and protected by law. So that you can watch over us. Otherwise, you weaken media, you weaken democracy. Corruption will even more spread around because matatakot kayo eh. Don't report that because baka balikan tayo ng mga yan. The effects of this action, this decision on ABS, the giant now, will affect all of Philippine media. And that is not going to be good for the development of our strong democracy. Bagong-bago lang tayo. We are recovering from EDSA 1 and when ABS played a major role in after the post-EDSA period.
So are you in favor?
Channel natin dito, bagong-bago ito eh.
So are you in favor?
Congressman, but
Are you in favor na tanggalin sa politiko yung pagre-regulate, yung franchise, hindi naman tanggalin, i-delegate nyo.
The
Yung
moment
power
you are
to
yung congressional power of granting or rejecting a
Sa
franchise
Constitution you can
is
delegate.
part of the Constitution.
Yeah, that's why you can delegate.
Constitutional provision yun eh. If we want to change that, let's change the Constitution. Pero I am for a strong media. That's my point. I was mayor for 9 years. I mean, you know that. I was also criticized, no end, by many sectors of media. I was doing my best, but they were heckling from the sideline. Mali yan, ganito yan. Ikaw, ganito yan. Okay lang, that's part of public office.
Yeah, but
You are given
Congressman,
guidance.
if you don't mind, no, and I'll start off with a comment and try to talk myself into a question. But honestly, as a media person, I have to say I'm quite shocked by the number of congressmen who cannot grasp the very basic principle. You cannot legislate fairness, that you cannot legislate bias out of media.
Yeah.
But in the past weeks, you've heard a lot of congressmen really saying this, and it really seems like they really cannot grasp the idea that no, it's a big market of ideas, and there's no way that Congress is the one that's going to solve bias. And no, I guess my question here is, I mean, what is the level of appreciation from what you could see, in all honesty, in all sincerity? What is the level and sophistication of appreciation of our congressmen on the very basic principle of press freedom?
I didn't get the question, Robbie.
Do they understand press freedom? I guess I mean, because I will take it on good faith that they're being very sincere, that the congressmen are being very sincere in saying, no, we want fairness, we want balance, and so on. But I guess my question is, on the other side of that, do your colleagues, your friends, your enemies, whatever, but do your colleagues, do you think really understand one of the basic premises of press freedom, which is that you cannot actually legislate fairness. You cannot actually legislate bias out.
I agree with you. Eh lalo na kung ang magde-decide ng bias ay kami mga politiko, walang mangyayari sa media natin. At tayo hihina ang media. There'll come a time, media will no longer be the fourth estate, will no longer be the power to correct abuses in government. You will lose that function. If you keep on saying that it's okay to close down networks just like that, air charges, and follow a script to prove that they are not even succeeding in proving guilt. Lahat ng mga sinabi nila, hindi nila napatunayan. Pero nung sinabi ng regulator ganito, this is not a question of law, sabi ni Barsaga. This is a moral issue. Teka muna. Sabi niyo, illegal eh. Nung sinabi na autoridad, legal, hindi yan ang tanong ko. Ang tanong ko, immoral. Hindi tayo talaga matatapos, pero masusunod yung gusto nila. That's the reality in Congress. The majority will always prevail. And lalo na kung yung speaker, hindi naman talaga pagbibigyan ng laya ang botohan. Ang ibang sinasabi, ibang ginagawa. And I will say this straight to Speaker Cayetano. You say one thing, you do another. So, what else can I conclude? That this is all orchestrated. We're wasting people's money.
Okay. Congressman Lito Tiensa, maraming salamat for joining us tonight and good luck po sa ating lahat.
Ulitin ko, Ed, ako, inaalala ko kayo. Kayo media, hindi naman ako eh. But I was part of media for a long time. I was part of the advertising industry for a long time. So I understand all of these things that we discussed, and I am for a stronger media rather than a weakened, cowering media because of the cloud that the politicians will have over you. You do this and you will lose your franchise. Hindi maganda magiging bunga niyan, Ed. That is not the Congress that I fought for. Under martial law, there was no Congress. Under martial law, there was no press freedom. You say the wrong things, you go to jail. And do we want that? I don't want that. I want a real democracy to strengthen itself in the Philippines so that one day, not yet, there's still a young democracy. One day, our successor, our grandchildren, will benefit from a very stable Philippines, democratic and providing opportunities for all, with a strong media guarding everybody. You are the guardians. Do not give that up.
Okay, sir. Maraming
Alright.
salamat po. Congressman Lito Atienza,
Salamat,
thank you for joining us.
Congressman Atienza.
Salamat. Thank you.
Good
Thank
night.
Thank you po. Good night. And looks like we have a long day tomorrow. Assuming that they vote tomorrow. So good luck lang sa ating lahat. That's a wrap for tonight. Level up your viewing experience with Signal Prepaid's box-only deal. Now only 800 pesos for prepaid HD box. Plus, load on your first month and get your second month free. Go to your nearest Signal dealer now and bring your old Digibox to get this awesome deal. You can also catch One News on the Signal Play app. Register for a free account at signalplay.com and stream One News live anytime and anywhere. That will be all for this special edition of the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. I'm Edwin Gao, One News.
I'm Manny Paminton of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Robbie Alampay, and we are One News.